Welcome to the second episode of Rising Above Cancer, where we engage in a conversation about courage and strength. Today's host is Dr. Megha Deuskar, a dedicated assistant professor at the Department of Psychology at Fergusson College. Joining her is the remarkable Mr. Neeraj Trivedi, founder of the BMT Support Foundation and a survivor of bone marrow cancer himself. Tune in to this uplifting conversation as we explore his incredible journey and the invaluable work of his foundation.
Hello, and welcome to this podcast of Rising India Research Foundation. I have the pleasure and honor to have with us today Mr. Neeraj Trivedi, founder of BMT Support Foundation, which now works for patients with blood cancer, marrow-related malignancies, transplant, and stem cell therapies. Neeraj is a cancer survivor himself and someone who has gone through the harrowing experience of stem cell transplant, better known as bone marrow transplant. But more than anything else, someone who has a newfound purpose and an extremely beautiful vision of supporting people going through cancer. So, welcome, Neeraj. And in today's interview, I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions about your life, how it was in the past, in what way it changed. But more than focusing on the physical side of this journey with cancer, we will be talking more about the psychological and sometimes even the spiritual aspects of this journey.
Sure. So I think first let me share that it's an absolute honor to be here and to do the podcast. And for somebody like you who's actually doing the podcast for me, who's seen lives of so many people from very close quarters from a psychological aspect. So I think it's an absolute honor for me, and really thank you for having me here.
Okay. So actually the physical side of this journey is, I think, something that people talk about very often and everybody knows about those aspects. Moreover, I'm not a doctor, so there's no point in me interviewing you about the medical side of your journey.
Sure.
But I would really love to focus on the psychological side. So I really want to know about what this journey was for you personally. And so the first question that I want to ask you is, how was your life before cancer struck?
Wow. Like every other person, I grew up in a middle class family. I was born and raised in Chennai to two wonderful set of human beings, both very spiritually oriented. And I have two siblings, a sister and a brother. And it was an amazing journey to have grown up, and the typical aims of middle class, that you want to study, you want to be the best in the studies, you want to build a life, you want to build a career.
Right.
And I would say it's been an amazing journey for me in my corporate life as well.
Right.
I always used to laugh with my friends when they used to say, "Itna kaam mat kar yaar," and I'm like, "Mujhe kaam mein Ram dikhta hai."
Oh.
And I was so dedicated to my work, whatever I took up,
Yeah.
that I think I almost had a straight line growth, not even an incremental growth, which is a dangerous thing. Now I realize in hindsight. But pretty much it was just very steep, and I quickly picked up the ranks and kind of started growing in the career. I was the youngest general manager in the last company that I was working with at the age of 33.
Wow.
Managing a team of 250 plus.
My God.
Traveling around the world, meeting Fortune 500 clients, knowing different cultures, understanding people. So I think, it was a very different approach. And also from another perspective, as a human, as a personality, if you would say.
Yes, that's what
I was the go-getter. Like, you got to get this done. It has to be perfect. It has to be at Six Sigma levels. There is nothing ordinary that would work with me. I had to hire the best people. I had to work with the best in class. So a very typical go-getter attitude.
Right.
At the same time, I had a human approach to this.
Right.
But all in all, I would say, very much like a
focused. You almost remind me of the protagonist from Castaway, who was, before he was Castaway, he was extremely chasing and, that kind of
very much on those
very
lines.
Focused.
Absolutely, very much on those lines. So I think, that's how
That's how life was for you.
That's how life was for me.
And then how did this diagnosis creep into your life? Did it creep or did it come as a sudden blow?
So it's very interesting, my in-laws are doctors, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to marry my childhood sweetheart.
Okay.
And so her blood group has a negative to it, I had a positive to it. So the parents were always very concerned that you should do your blood checkup, annual blood health checkup at least once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we are like, okay, let's do it. So we followed that process from 2003 onwards. And in 2010 was when we did the blood test and everything was normal, and we said, can we just stop this process, ऐसे भी report में तो कुछ नहीं आ रहा.
Right.
And in 2011, we had a very small spike in the WBC levels.
Okay.
And that's when the pathologist said, I think it's time to meet a hematologist.
Okay.
And still little did we realize that, that what it would entail and what it would turn out to
It
be.
did not really sound alarm bells in your mind.
There was nothing.
Okay.
Because even when we spoke to a few other people, when we Googled up stuff, and it was like even a bad infection could cause
Exactly.
a small rise in WBC.
Right.
So it's not anything major. All the other counts are perfect. Everything seems to be in order. I was asymptomatic. There was no fever. There was nothing. Absolutely normal person. I used to cycle almost 20
Right.
kilometers every day, fit as a
Right.
fiddle, And yeah, so it is very unexpected in terms of how we found out.
Yeah.
And then, when the bone marrow aspiration actually happened, is when the diagnosis then came out.
All right.
That I had
Which
what is
was?
called as CML, chronic myeloid leukemia.
Right.
And so it's a very common thing which we found out later on. It is also called as a Philadelphia chromosome,
Right.
which is a mismatch between 9 and 22. So it seemed like there are millions of people having, like a Philadelphia chromosome.
Right.
But for an individual,
Yeah.
it's still cancer.
Right.
So-
So when you heard that word leukemia, what happened to you? What was your first reaction, psychological?
Honestly, I think when the doctor shared this, I broke down, okay? Because for me, this was like as if I had seen it coming, okay? And I'll tell you why. Because, my grandfather was diagnosed of cancer. My father died of cancer. So I knew
ran in the family, so
it
you
ran in the
kind of
family,
had
right? So somewhere there was this knowing that if it comes, then it's the end of it, right?
Yes.
And it hits you even more harder.
Absolutely.
Than when you're a normal person. You're like, okay, this is it. And when it really hit me, I broke down very badly.
Yeah.
Like in front of the doctor, it took almost 45 minutes for him to calm me down and said, no,
Correct.
don't worry, everything will be all right and stuff like that.
Right.
So there was no fear of death or, inevitability or something, but there was fear of what will happen to my family.
Oh my God, this
first
is
thing,
very
right?
interesting actually.
Yeah, because, right in the beginning, we had decided not to have kids. Even when we got married or even before we got married, we knew that this lifetime was not meant for them.
Okay.
And there was a higher purpose to our lives.
Okay.
And suddenly we saw everything coming to an end.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, it's just my mom and my wife, because three of us, we stayed together.
Okay.
It's like, okay, now what? What will happen to them?
Oh.
And that
it's
ran in my
really interesting
mind.
that you weren't really scared of your own death, but you were actually worried about your family, what would happen to them, how they would go through it.
Yeah. So, that was really my point of concern, saying, yeah, at a young age, I was just diagnosed at 35, right?
Right.
So
right.
it's not an age where most people are kind of doing things that they love. And I stepped out of the career exactly that same year, okay?
Right.
We had decided that we'll pay the EMIs for the house. And the minute the EMI finishes, the next month I will resign. It was almost planned, okay? So, we paid off our EMIs in April. In May, I put down my papers. In June, I get this diagnosis.
Oh my God.
So it was like, now what?
Right.
So it just, all of a sudden, it hits you like a
hits
tsunami.
you, right.
Saying you have no cover, you have nothing, you have no corporate job, you have no money. All that is still fine, but what will happen to the family?
Right. Right.
And I think that's really what was running in my mind.
And then how did you come to this point of acceptance that yes, leukemia is here and I have got it, and my family, for whatever, however, they will have to live with it?
It was tough, okay, honestly speaking. And I don't think the acceptance just comes like this. I had a fantastic doctor.
Okay.
I had good circle of friends. I had a beautiful community that really looked after me and stuff like that. So when the doctor said that it's okay, there are so many people, living with this kind of leukemia, having one pill, it was almost like a miracle drug then.
Okay.
It's a very well-known drug called hematin, which
Right.
worked like miracles. And
Which means no chemo, no radiation,
no chemo, no
surgery.
radiation, no surgery, nothing. And I
Just
was like,
one pill.
how is that even possible? Okay, my first reaction, how is that even possible? He said, no, this is how it is, and it's been working. People live their entire lifetimes for 30, 35, 40 years on this medicine, and they're all right with it. And even in Pune, we have many cases who live with imatinib on. In fact, there is a whole group in the country with more than 40,000 people living on imatinib, a happy life and stuff like that.
Okay.
But all that you realize much later when the doctor shares with you, right?
Right.
And when I started taking imatinib, at least the first month, I was not very sure how it will settle with my body and stuff. But 3 months into imatinib, and I said, this is working beautifully for me.
Okay.
And I got back to all my activities. In fact, while I was in imatinib, I did a 1,000-kilometer cycling from Pune to Gujarat.
Yeah. So it was
while
clearly
on
working for you.
imatinib.
The
So
pill was
clearly the
working for
imatinib
you.
was working
Yeah.
for me.
And no side effects?
Yeah, this is one side effect of
Okay.
that you started, looking like a fair and lovely guy.
Okay.
With the fairness of the skin that comes. So you start looking, even more glowing and all that. And people mistake that, unfortunately, for
Glow.
having very good glow, very good health, very good diet, but it's actually a side effect of the medicine.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's also very funny because you suddenly start looking healthier than you were before while on a tablet.
But why would that be? Why do you start glowing?
It's a side effect of imatinib.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just amazing in terms of how it works for different people. But so it was just very, very beautiful.
So apart from looking fair, there was no other side effect for you?
Yeah, there was no...
And you kept
literally.
feeling healthy also?
I kept feeling healthy. You just had to be on tab in terms of your blood test and regular blood test.
Okay.
And as long as, those were in order. Maybe there was a spike in uric acid once a while.
But apart from that,
virtually nothing.
Major, right?
Virtually
And
nothing.
for how long did this drug continue to work for you?
So for about 5 years, I had expected this to work forever. But unfortunately for me, I didn't know it was like a ticking time bomb. Which, because if we had done certain tests every year, we knew how much the efficacy of the drug would be.
Okay.
But somewhere I think that got missed out as a part of the diagnostic routine.
Okay.
And so, that's when in 5 years, it somehow stopped working. And there was a change in mutation in my genetic mutation. Maybe it was due to a change in mutation, or whether the medicine lost its efficacy. It could be a mix of both. We don't know right now at this point. But the doctors say that it was a change in the genetic mutation, which created a new mutation called T315I, which then turned out to be a non-curable blood cancer.
Oh my
And the
God.
only option for that was to undergo a stem cell transplant.
Oh.
So that diagnosis happened in the February of 2016.
Okay.
And so that's when the whole new episode of stem cell really came into my life. I had no idea what stem cells meant till that point. I
Yeah.
didn't even know something like that existed ever.
Oh my God. So you had to kind of get ready for another journey. So you thought everything was going well, and suddenly now this new thing opens up.
Absolutely. And just not only that, just imagine what had happened in those 5 years. I had a beautiful social life where I went to the Gandhi Ashram. I spent 3 years in there. I was working with the slum kids, people
Yes.
with blindness. There were some leprosy communities that I was learning from.
Yeah.
And then we created a community called Moved by Love,
Right.
of all people who had similar interest, getting together for retreats and stuff like that.
And you also worked with a group of farmers.
Yeah, and then I kind of started working with a group of farmers and created a community of 200 farmers, all organic. And we created a project called a 100-mile project, where anything that is grown in the 100 mile has to be sold in the 100 mile.
Okay.
So as to reduce the carbon footprint.
Correct.
So I was organizing fruit festivals, food festivals, millet festivals. I was enjoying my life. Okay,
Right.
I was with the farmers, sleeping on their terraces, looking at the moon and stars. Eating the best organic produce right from the tree to kind of this thing. I have never tasted mangoes like that. So you're living that life
Existentially very fulfilling for
very
yourself.
fulfilling for what you wanted to do always, right?
Right.
People always talk about having retirement, going to a farmhouse,
Right.
living like this.
Here.
I was already living at 40.
Correct.
And and this diagnosis just comes in like a
Sudden
whole new
shell shock.
kind of a tsunami.
Correct.
And so it was a big jolt in our life when that kind of came in.
Right. Because acceptance, I think, is the crucial part of this whole thing. They say it's easier said than done, like acceptance. But you had to accept that either there is complete this bone marrow transplant or nothing.
So I always look at, what are you accepting? Okay, I think, so let's go to a fundamental question.
Okay.
When we say about acceptance, what all am I accepting then? I accept that I had a brilliant childhood. I accept that I had a great career.
Okay.
I accept that I was living a fulfilling life. And all this might be washed away, and I'm accepting this new step that I'm about to embark.
Okay.
So I'm accepting all of this, knowing fully well that entering a stem cell transplant means that you have only 50% chance of surviving anyway. Because these are donor stem cells.
Right.
And if the stem cells don't settle in the body, then within 15 days it could just kind of create havoc in your body, and
Right.
you're on your way to Ram Nam Satya Hai.
Right. But just a minute, I just wanted to ask you this acceptance of the fact that your childhood has gone well, your career has gone well, and you are living the life, the dream life that you wanted,
Correct.
etc. So, by that, do you mean that we also have to be cognizant of the fact that these are blessings that are already there, and we need to be grateful that that also has been there? Because I think for many people, that question of in cancer is why me, but then why me in terms of having a great childhood as well?
Absolutely. So I think, so that's a problem with human mind, okay? And that's a problem with mind like mine, which is so logical, analytical, and it wants to put things in place, right? Saying, why me? What harm have I done? I've lived a good life. I've had good set of parents.
So did you
I had
go
a
through
phenomenal
that?
life. I did, and I went through all of that.
Okay.
And for me, I think it's very easy to say that being grateful to what you have, but I think gratitude takes just so much more for when it comes from within, knowing that you are already taken care of. So I think gratitude is a journey. Gratitude is not something that I can say at that point in my life when I know whether I'm going to make it or not. Gratitude suddenly just doesn't rise. It's very difficult. People may say, do a gratitude exercise or just 10 times list things that you're grateful for. But in the midst of that chaos which is going on in the mind, between stem cell at one point, high dose chemo at the other end, which is already creating a mind fog,
I know.
heavy medication, steroids, loss of your own individual self,
Right.
zero cognitive ability. You have to learn to walk again sometimes, right? You stand up and you fall down like a lump of shit. So,
Oh my God.
somebody has to help you to the bathroom, somebody has to wash your bum. Realizing all that
Right.
after acceptance, then I think gratitude then finally shows its face. That I'm still there.
Oh my
And I'm
God,
holding you.
Neeraj, this is profound what you've said. And it's also very frank, to say that, like you did not say that you were grateful right from the beginning, but it just takes a lot of time for
Absolutely.
gratitude to emerge.
And so many people have come in, right? Just imagine
Yes.
how many people it takes, So there's a beautiful saying that it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Yeah.
Similar to that, I think it takes a city or even the world to make somebody come out of transplant.
Correct.
Because I'll just give you 4 or 5 instances, okay?
About how this journey was,
how this journey to
Yes.
true gratitude in that space emerged, okay? While I was entering my BMT room, there was a saint that called up. And he said, Neeraj, just remember there are two levels at which work is happening. Okay? One is at a physical level, where the doctors will take care of you. There's the entire medical fraternity. And then there's a spiritual level, at which know that all of us are praying for you. Okay? So just that one instance, okay? And then the whole high dose chemotherapy starts and kind of everything. happens, and my wife happened to speak to one of the farmers.
Okay.
And he was trying to reach me, and unfortunately my phone was switched off because I was in the BMT unit.
Yeah.
And he happened to speak to my wife, and he said, "This has happened to Neeraj." So so all these guys is Gujarati. He said, "Bhai ne શું થયું?" So it's like, "અરે ભાઈને કેન્સર નીકળ્યું છે અને we are kind of going through this journey."
Oh.
So he says, "અરે તમે ચિંતા નહીં કરો બેન તમે ચિંતા નહીં કરો, અમે લોકો પ્રાર્થના કરીએ છીએ."
My God.
And that evening, 2 villages, okay, and I'm
I
just
am
getting
getting
goosebumps.
goosebumps too.
200 villages walk up all the way on top of the hill to a temple
Yeah.
and do Hanuman Chalisa 11 times for a brother that they want to
Oh
save.
my God.
How can you ever return that gratitude?
No.
It's just impossible, right?
Yeah.
And there are so many friends that we had made on the way from, Moved by Love and Service Space and all that.
Right.
You constantly keep getting an email
Right.
that, "Oh, I'm sitting 1 hour in silence for you today.
Yes.
I have been fasting for you."
Right.
Or all the wives of the farmers who used to tie Rakhi on me, they all left sweets for 1 year. They said, "Until we see Neeraj's face, we are not going to eat sweets."
What are you saying?
Is there any way you can ever even repay the gratitude? Forget even being in gratitude. Like, what else remains in this kind of situation? And I'll give you one scenario that really I think is kind of overshadows everything. Okay. I was in the ICU and I was put on dialysis. My kidneys were failing. Okay, because of so I had a bad fever.
Okay.
It was due to a virus called CMV.
Okay.
Okay. And so because of that, they had to give me heavy medications because my counts were really, really high.
Yeah.
One of the side effects of that is that it has a chance to affect your kidney.
Okay.
So my creatinine levels just shot up. They were like
Right.
5.6, 5.8 and stuff. And they said, "We don't know. We have 48 hours. We will watch."
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And I was taken immediately to the ICU where they had to do the dialysis and stuff to bring the creats down. And it was raining heavily that day. And my wife was outside the ICU unit all alone, okay? And she was teary-eyed. She was in tears,
Of course,
okay?
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And she was like, "At this time, 2 a.m. in the morning, is there somebody I can talk to?
Okay.
Or somebody I know who's there for me?"
Okay.
Okay? And she was weeping because she was alone. She was
Yes,
going
of
through
course.
this, and it's tough to
Everything
lose
is
a
so
loved one, right?
precarious, yes.
And it's so tough to lose a loved one, especially since we are childhood sweethearts. It's like,
Yeah.
I know her, the whole growing up story, right? Strong woman breaking down at this point and kind of not knowing what will happen in 48 hours. At 2 a.m. in the night when it's raining, it's dark. And suddenly, exactly at that point, there is a ping on the mobile.
Okay.
And she opens that email, and there's a friend in the US. He says, "Just letting you know, sister, I'm sitting for meditation right now for 1 hour."
Oh my God. And that's
So,
all she needed to hear.
That's all that she needed to hear. And she said, "He will now come out."
Wow.
So it's at this time when the community has to rise to this.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's at this time you realize that you are nothing. But the full gratitude, I think gratitude is best expressed when the tears roll out of your eyes.
Yes.
Of just pure gratitude for people who are with you in the process.
Correct. Correct.
So it's not a feeling or an emotion. I think gratitude is far more deeper than that.
Definitely.
It is as good as bone deep.
Yeah,
Saying
yeah.
when it
Exactly.
comes from that level of cellular
Yes.
thank you,
Yeah.
that your whole being,
Right.
it's merged and fully engrossed in that offering
Right.
of the word thank you, is when really gratitude
To the
flows.
universal force. And I also
to the
wanted
universal force, to the friends, to the community, and just so much more.
So as we're talking about gratitude here, Neeraj, I just wanted to know is that force of gratitude that you just said, does that help you to come out of the suffering of the body and rise to a much higher level of existence somehow?
Wow. Okay. I think that's a very interesting question. Honestly, and it has layers to it. Let me, now that I introspect, it has layers to it. So when somebody like me goes through this journey, I always see what is it that has come my way. Okay.
Right.
For example, when I was in the BMT unit and I was, losing blood every day, there were 75 bottles of blood that were given to me. 75 blood. So you don't know who gave you the blood. A
Right.
stranger, which caste, which community, which background, which gender. So you stop thinking about these things, okay? And while you're just processing these things,
Yeah.
you again come to a stage of realization that somebody who has given you 2.5 million cells has translated into 70 trillion cells in your body.
My God.
And that process is happening.
Yeah.
While that process is happening, you realize that your blood group undergoes a change. Okay?
And
So
yours
the
did.
donor's blood group became my blood group.
Right.
Right? For example, my sister's blood group was B positive, mine was O positive. So the blood group undergoes a change, right? Slowly, when you again kind of realize of how many people are working tirelessly behind you in the caregiving space.
Yeah.
Okay? There's my mom who used to cook food for me with the Sanskrit shlokas on her. Constantly she's chanting these
Right.
shlokas and she's cooking for me. My father-in-law and my mother-in-law sitting, they almost shifted here while this was happening. And they used to look at the reports and they used to say, give this food to Neeraj and that food and this will work better and that will work better. And so the whole cooking, filling up of the dabba, and every day, all the meals were given to me fresh by somebody. Okay, somebody delivered them every single day to the hospital where I could reheat those and kind of eat them.
You cannot not be conscious of that universal force, that
Absolutely.
divine.
So I'm still building up. Okay, this is still there. There was
coming.
one friend who said, I want to do something for you, Neeraj. And I'm like, I don't know, what can you do? He says, I cycle in the morning. So I will bring you the first tea in the morning. Okay? He used to cycle every day from his Bibwewadi house and come all the way to Deccan in Sahyadri. At 5:30
Okay.
with the flask of tea, because he knows that I used to have tea very early.
True.
And I'm like, how do you process this? Okay.
True.
And I still laugh at it. I think, it was the worst tea that I've ever had in my life. But it was the best thing for me in healing at that space.
Correct.
Okay. Because, so when these things starts happening to you, you then start realizing how much, for example, you start having love for your own body.
Correct.
Because it is adjusting to all the new cells.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and you never ever looked at it. The skin changes 3 times, the nail changes, the hair comes and goes, So there is literal transformation that you're seeing again and again, over and over. And you're thinking, wow, okay, so much is happening, okay?
Yeah.
And then you connect to a deeper self.
Correct.
Or who you actually are. And then you start questioning, saying, who am I really?
Yeah.
If I'm not the 73 trillion cells, if I'm not the 75 bottles of blood, if I'm not the tea that somebody else gives to me, if I'm not the chemotherapy or the medication, if I'm not the skin, I'm not the bones, I'm not the muscle, then who am I?
Right.
And then the real question of existence then comes forth. It's not that you ask these questions. I think this arises when the ripening of the fruits of gratitude,
Correct.
when they happen, this ripens, this question comes up. And then you're like, okay, now I cannot be the old self all over again.
Correct.
Because now you have almost got rid of your gender bias.
Yeah.
You have almost got rid of the people of this is man, woman, young, old, child, not child.
Absolutely.
You kind of given it. Okay, the wealth matters in terms of, the hospital charges have to be taken care of. But apart from that, what is true wealth is the wealth of the community, the wealth of the prayers, everything that comes through it.
Yes.
And that's when, then you become a new person.
Right.
The unfortunate part, however, again, it's very funny how human mind works, okay? Now, you're a completely new person in gratitude. You are in full, this thing of how beautiful the universe has organized things for me, okay?
Correct.
And my journey has really been magical,
Yeah.
okay? My wife happened to go on a yatra in 2014 where she said, I want to connect heart to hearts with the people of the country. Okay, so she called it Bhav Yatra. During the yatra, she happens to land up in an ashram in Kerala. Okay, where she meets an old couple, and she starts calling them Amma Appa, Amma Appa. Little should they know that when my time would come, when I would be diagnosed and having to undergo a bone marrow transplant, the same Amma Appa would happen to call her and say, Are, what happened? I've been thinking of you for 2 days. He says, Are, Amma, Neeraj has been diagnosed with this, and now we don't know what to do. He said, Are, you call up my son, he will figure out something. Okay. Little did we know that the old Amma Appa's son will turn out to be Dr. Kannan Subramaniam.
What are you saying?
Okay. So this is still not it.
Yeah.
And during the process of transplant, his younger brother would happen to meet my sister. They will fall in love and get married after a year. Okay. So it's truly magical to see how the universe conspires. Okay.
Right.
So you know that you are already taken care of.
Yes.
So then what is it for you to do now?
Right.
Okay. The question is, what do I go out and do?
Right. So in some way you kind of sense an inner calling and you start answering it because of this question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One is the inner calling. The second is the force of the mind.
Yeah.
Because the old patterns want to catch you.
Okay.
Okay. So the old patterns literally come to you, all the old habits, all the old thoughts, insecurities. For example, financial insecurity, which is a very real one in a case like bone marrow transplant.
Right, right.
Now again you want to go back to the corporate life. You want to again achieve a position. You want to start earning more. You want to save more. You want to plan for retirement. The mind wants to do all of this.
Right.
I even tried once or twice.
Okay.
I got small projects, but both of them fell flat. They didn't go through.
Okay.
It's happened first time in my life that I failed doing something.
Right. But the urge to go back
But
to
the
that.
urge to go back was the mind's calling. It was not the inner calling.
Right.
And then when you look back and you say everything fell flat because this whole thing of serving the people back of what you have gone through is probably the biggest service you should be doing.
Right.
So that's where the sense of your inner calling then truly takes place.
Okay.
It's not without its own this thing that, oh, I just found my inner calling and I'm going to start doing it. It's when everything else around you falls like a pack of cards.
Oh my God.
And the only thing that stands bright is when you truly know that it's your inner calling.
Correct.
And to have the courage to accept it now in all its purity, in all its force, in all its humility.
Right.
To say that this is my calling.
Right, right.
Okay. For the person who's taken care of me, has to take care of my family, has to take care of my retirement, has to take care of my needs.
Correct.
There is no I now.
Right.
In a very significant sense, the significant I is reduced to the I.
Right, right,
Saying,
right.
okay, I will be an instrument to what is happening now.
Sure, sure.
So the new journey really starts shaping that way.
Beautiful. So actually this brings us to the most crucial question that I wanted to ask you in this podcast, Neeraj, and which is about BMT. So what does BMT? How did you actually start? How did you embark on this journey then? After once you answered this inner calling.
It's just amazing, how the doctors used to just call up and say, why don't you meet this, particular patient? He's having some struggle accepting difficulty. He's having problems while going through this journey and stuff like that. So I just started casually meeting people.
Okay.
Okay. And from that, I realized that I love doing this.
Yes.
Okay. And the people started responding in a way where they started feeling close to me.
Yes, yes.
But I will still say it was a tough journey. Okay. Because you're not prepared for this. Okay.
True.
And, so unfortunately, I don't come from a psychology background, so I don't understand so much of the psychology stuff. But when I used to meet younger patients, okay, I used to come back and fall ill. I used to have fever, 102, 103 fever. I used to have viral attacks. And I'm like, what's happening? I'm still not able to understand, right? And that's when you sit and understand, and then you realize, oh, I'm still attaching myself to something that I should not.
Okay.
Of a new patient, of a new child who's going through a journey like this. So
And
how do
what
I
is it
center?
that you're attaching yourself to the
emotionally,
suffering,
the suffering.
Okay, yeah.
That why so really thank you for bringing this out.
Right.
What was I getting attached to?
Huh.
The attached to that nobody should suffer so much. the poor child is going through so much, right? And I will cling on to those. Okay? Unless you center yourself and you say, I want to serve unconditionally detached from a space of offering.
Wow.
That whatever I am doing is an offering to those people. Okay?
Oh.
And I just don't want anybody to go through what I have gone through. That's all. Simple message which कि यार मेरे साथ बहुत हुआ है, किसी के साथ नहीं होना चाहिए.
Correct.
So when that sense of gratitude comes in, and as I said, you ripen there, you want to offer it back. And while I was in the entire social community, there's this beautiful mentor of mine called Nipun Mehta, and I would like to really share that he's had a great role in shaping us in terms of who we are as individuals. So he has this beautiful line. He said, service does not begin when you have something to give. It blossoms naturally when you have nothing left to take.
Oh.
So there is no taking from the service. Service begins when it blossoms naturally.
Right.
So BMT Support Foundation has blossomed from that place.
Okay.
Of just pure offering, and we will go. Okay. So, and we will have processes to follow. We will have the regulations to do. We will have the registrations to do. We will have donations to raise. Let all that happen in the space of service.
Right.
And let it just flow for whom it has to flow to.
Right.
So, honestly, I think we've been true in kind of, creating this foundation.
Right.
And that's exactly why we created a Section 8 company.
Okay.
So when the time comes, we hand it over to somebody and we take the real sannyas in terms of the, which we want to very soon, but I think the time hasn't ripened yet.
Okay.
But, it will eventually come to that.
Right. But right now you support people with all types of cancer?
Right now, we support people with blood cancer specifically. Okay, because that's as much as you can do. You want to go inch wide and mile deep. So we help patients understand what a transplant is, or what a leukemia journey will look like, what your chemotherapy will look like, what are the like the things you have to take care during the transplant. We have also brought out a beautiful BMT patient's handbook.
Okay.
That's more as a reference guide for people, when
so
they go through this
literally
journey.
You've mapped out a territory of how that journey through leukemia is going to look like, so that people know what to expect in
Absolutely.
the process.
Okay. And we have the best doctors kind of, talking about it and stuff like that.
Okay.
However, I definitely see that there is a gap in terms of understanding, the psychological journey of a person in an oncological process.
Right.
And, I think the work that Rising India is doing is really commendable, because we need not only psychologists, but we need psychologists who understand the oncological part of the treatments.
Right.
It's very easy to say that, I'm going to have a conversation with a person.
Yeah.
But unless you know what this chemo is going to take you,
right,
what it's doing to you,
right,
or for example, a stage 3 lymphoma is a very different conversation between a stage 2 leukemia.
Okay.
Okay, even a grade 4 lymphoma can be reversed.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
Under some conditions and kind of good health. Whereas a stage 2 leukemia can be extremely dangerous.
Right.
So understanding these oncological processes along with the psychological frameworks.
Right.
I think if these two are merged together, I think more and more people can be empowered.
Right.
And so it will just help. And there's a lack of dearth of psycho-oncologists in the country.
Correct.
You can literally count them on your fingers.
Right.
At
Because
this point.
psycho-oncology is something that is required, right, even from before the breaking of the bad news, because there's so many people who struggle with just that idea that they suspect something is wrong, but they're extremely scared to go ahead and get themselves checked.
Correct.
From that point onwards to, like you said, your journey about when the news was first broken, what happened to you, to acceptance, to finally choosing your treatment.
Yeah.
And then actually that whole process, like you said, these crucial days when the transplant is happening,
Correct.
the chemotherapy is also happening, and the blood transfusion and everything.
Correct.
So I think patients also need a map of it,
Yeah.
and they also need someone to lean on like somebody who can really be with them?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we are very keen is to map the entire end-to-end patient cycle
Yeah.
for all these oncological blood-related processes.
Right.
Because without that, and without what a person is going through in terms of psychological, changes or shifts or questions or this thing, you can never create well-researched, empirical, evidence-based interventions for them.
Exactly.
And I think that is a need of the hour, where we have to map not only the end-to-end processes, but where the interventions are required at which part.
Right.
So that we can then empower the psycho-oncologists to go out and properly intervene at the time where it's needed.
Correct.
For example, there might be a one-to-one conversation at this stage, which is
Right.
important. The other end, there could be a community conversation where they want to meet a group of survivors.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And then there's a conversation for caregivers alone.
Yes.
Right? And then there is a need maybe for an information booklet.
Correct.
Maybe there's a need for QPL.
Right.
We don't know, right? So unless you are mapping it
Yeah.
and you are understanding it, which is a research-based process, you will never be able to come up with the right interventions.
True, true.
So that is one of really one of the things that we want to do at BMT Support Foundation.
Right.
And the other thing is to raise awareness
Right.
of regular blood health checkups. It has
Right.
worked for me.
Yeah.
And even though I caught it very early on, I had to go what I had to go through. That's a different story.
Sure.
But if it's prevented early on, I think a lot of the pain can be saved.
Correct. And I also believe that this psycho-oncology kind of counseling has to be done also very sensitively. So it is not just going out there in the field and telling the patient that, okay, right now you're irritable, but let's see how we can bring this down, etc. But really trying to understand the phenomenon from the person's perspective.
I absolutely agree, okay? And on this, there's a joke that used to happen with me. So I'm an early sleeper, okay? I like dot 9:30 and I'm out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in a different universe.
Yeah.
I'm not here. So now this exactly 10 o'clock, there used to be a person who used to come to my room.
Mm-hmm.
He used to bang open the door, switch on the lights, and then he used to wake me and say, "Kai tras hota ka?"
Oh God.
And I took this for 3 days. And then the 4th day, I had the courage, mustered the courage to say, "You are the tras.
Oh.
If you stop this,
Yes.
I will stop what I'm doing. Otherwise, please do not disturb me when I'm sleeping."
I understand what you're trying to say.
And-
In a well-meaning way, people do so much harm.
And that's just so much. For example, on the psychology, psycho-oncology, there was a patient who, I kind of visited, and the psychologist was very unhappy with this whole thing. And then the patient tells me, he only comes and gives me motivational lectures.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Absolutely.
I'm like, okay, got it. So
The
let's
whole
have
pep
a
talk.
conversation. The whole pep talk one. See, one has to imagine the kind of condition of the patient. Okay,
Yeah.
you have to be walked by 2 people to pass urine. Okay, somebody has to make you sit on your potty to do potty, and you are barely eating 3 small meals of liquid in a day. And there is somebody who said, yeah, don't worry, everything will be all right.
Oh, this is, yeah.
There has to be so much more compassion inbuilt in the
Correct.
process.
Correct.
And I think just that compassion, that it's something beyond me.
Right.
I might not be able to understand this full circle.
Yeah.
But can I have a heart-to-heart connect with this person?
Hmm.
Can I connect at a level of human to human?
Right.
Can I connect at a level of pain to pain, suffering to suffering?
Yeah.
When I see almost a reflective image of what that person might be going through,
Right.
is when I can even start holding space for that person. Forget healing.
Absolutely.
And in that space of holding space is when the healing then starts naturally.
Correct.
And I think that's the space that we need to start holding for people.
Right. And would you also like to share with me a little bit about the helpline that you will, where people can call and ask for support at that point when they really need to be heard?
Yes. In fact, one of the things that we realized during the process is the first 100 days of the transplant are very critical.
Yeah.
Okay. So during these 100 days, what we've created is that we have a special number on which anybody going through transplant can call.
Okay.
Okay. And they can reach out to us. We are available from 8 in the morning to 10 in the night because we know that a lot of problems can start happening, like towards the evening for people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so a
in
lot.
terms of mood shifts,
Yeah,
irritability.
in terms of mood shifts, irritability also.
Yeah.
And they have to drag the day.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a
Yeah.
drag for the day for them.
True.
There'll be nurses coming at 5 in the morning to take your blood.
Yeah.
So it starts at 5 in the morning. So
Yeah.
by the time it's 4 p.m., you are like
Listless and irritated with everything.
irritated. Even with the caregiver takes in so much. It's
Yeah.
unimaginable.
Yeah.
The amount of pain that the caregivers kind
True.
of take.
True.
And also the fact that the doctors will make you sign that I'm going to give him this medication. If this doesn't work and if you lose, we are not to blame. So I was actually sharing with you that the journey with the caregivers is even more difficult, for them as caregivers. For example, they make you sign a form every time that we are going, giving this medication, and if something might happen, then this is the outcome. We are not responsible. So when you sign, so my wife one day got very irritated, okay, with this whole thing. She said, I have signed 100 forms. And I know that my husband might die right now or tomorrow, whether you give the medication, not. If it has to happen, it will happen.
Yeah.
But don't do this.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I think every time this happens, and also the financial pressures,
Yeah.
that, aapka bill pending hai, you have to pay it in kind of 2 days. So then you kind of go around, so the caregivers has this double responsibility.
Yeah.
One is to be centered, to take care of the patient
Right.
and handle everything, not only what the patient is going through,
But back end.
but also all the back end that's happening.
Absolutely.
Right? घर से डब्बा निकला का या नहीं, अपने finances हुआ का नहीं, ये and all that, and struggling with very difficult questions of life.
That's
saying,
not.
what's happening now?
Right. Right.
Okay. Fortunately for me, we used to really laugh and have such amazing conversations.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, in case if I die,
Huh.
okay, you have a second chance.
Huh.
Why don't you think about it?
Oh.
What kind of boyfriend would you now like in your second life? So
my
we used to
God.
laugh about
Okay.
it. But these are not conversations that you could have with everybody, right?
Right.
Unless the caregivers, otherwise you have very emotional caregivers
I know.
who at the spur of the moment will break down.
Right.
Or slight fever, अरे हाँ इसको fever आ गया.
Correct.
So I think there is a whole lot of training also that's needed for the caregivers.
Yeah.
To
Training also and support also, I feel.
Yeah.
As psycho-oncologists, I think we can support not only the patient but the caregivers, and also, like you said, these
I agree.
formal caregivers in hospitals. And that's actually
Absolutely.
the reason why I would like to really appreciate the work that Rising India Research Foundation is doing,
Right.
in terms of offering this space for not only patients but their informal caregivers, even the medical professionals, as
Right.
they care for someone going through cancer and the whole journey. So that's,
Absolutely. And I think, it's just so needed and it will be so helpful for
Correct.
patients. So imagine a psycho-oncologist, okay, who has the understanding of psychology, oncology,
correct.
with a very beautiful spiritual opening within them that allows them to have these conversations unconditionally.
I think you have highlighted the most
Not with a
important point.
framework, not with this thing, but just human to human compassion, flowing from one heart to the other.
True.
And just holding space for that beautiful conversation requires a lot of spiritual depth.
Correct.
And
correct.
I think that cultivation
Yeah.
of psycho-oncologist beyond just the medical and the psychology framework,
Right.
I think will just add so much more value to the work that they're about to kind of embark on.
True.
So-
So Neeraj, the last question in this
Sure.
podcast which I want to ask you, because I think we can have this conversation for a very long time, and there's so many aspects of this experience, your journey, that we have really not even touched, we've not even started conversations, like especially around this idea of advanced directives, or how to financially make provision, or what kind of language doctors use, or what helps the patient, what is very, very unhelpful for patients. So there's so many things that we haven't covered, and I don't think we
Yeah.
can really cover it in a matter of a podcast. But still, one last question, which if I don't ask this question, I will feel that there's something that I'm left. There's something incomplete which I wanted to know.
Okay.
And that question is, if God would give you a second chance to live, and would give you that choice, that either you live the same life so that you go through cancer, or you have an option of living the nearer the life that was going, but not have this cancer experience. Which option would you choose?
I wouldn't even blink for a moment.
Okay.
I would choose the entire cancer experience as it is.
Okay.
Because I think this journey, what it has given me, has completely shaped me into a new human being.
Right.
Okay? And I think this is a journey that I have traversed for several lifetimes. I would even not hesitate to say several hundred lifetimes. Because the amount of catharsis you have through this journey, you are really able to see who you are not.
Oh.
And to have a blessing to be in that space, I wouldn't have experienced otherwise.
Right.
I would be still caught up in the entire material setup of
Right.
achievements, wanting this, wanting that, and rather than from a space of, wow,
Yes.
I'm just one with everything, and how can
And your cancer has been the catalyst for that transformation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's just unimaginable for somebody to say this, but truly I think it's just so it's almost like a like a butterfly going through the journey, and kind of how slowly you break through and have new wings.
Right.
I think new wings of wisdom have sprung up.
Yeah.
A new humility has come in.
Right.
Complete humility that you cannot even. There is zero control.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And there are new questions that you're asking,
Yes.
saying what is hope?
Yeah.
Okay, what is resilience?
Right.
What truly matters in life?
Right.
And what is community? What is compassion?
Right.
How do you then start kind of operating in this new exploded being that you are now put into?
Yeah.
So I see this as
You're
a blessing.
truly grateful for that
I'm
experience.
very
Yeah.
grateful. I think it's a blessing.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me for this podcast, and thank you so much, Rising India Research Foundation, for giving me this opportunity to be with Mr. Neeraj Trivedi for this wonderful and very enlightening and very frank exposition of his journey through cancer. Thank you so much.
I really can't thank you enough, Megha. I think this has been truly amazing, and every time I think you talk about a journey, in fact, I have a chance to deeply reflect
Yeah.
and reascertain where I was versus where I am today.
Right.
So I must hold gratitude for you to having taken me through this journey, and of course Rising India to kind of organize this podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you.